managers, after how amazing Canto 3 was and its follow-up in the intervallo, do you expect me to believe that you are not messing with me when you tell me that Canto 4 is better? I was told I'd love this Canto, that it would make me feel something. Others of you said things like you wish that it was shorter, and it bored you because it was too long. So after making it all the way through Yeang's Canto, do I fall into the former or the latter category? Or maybe somewhere in the middle? Which side would you guess I'd be in? Keep that in mind as you watch through the video, but buckle in as I go over the longest Canto thus far. Not gonna lie guys, before Canto 4, Yi was just some My Chemical Romance knockoff cosplayer in my opinion. He would talk and people would hint that he used to be more talkative than he was being, but the most we saw from him was his inclusion in the Intervallo's cook-off, which was not a problem, but definitely didn't really push him out of his shell that much. The look, like he was depressed or wore too much eyeliner, was always there, and his sunken eyes that screamed of tortured past. And that's just what Canto 4 does wonders jumping into. However, for the lengthiest Canto, what I thought of the man turns out to be just a small blurb on a piece of paper. Oh, how the tables turned in this Canto, right managers? Unlike Sinclair, who was always a coward that I would write off in a real fight, and as such it affected what I thought about him going into C3, i.e. Canto 3, Yeang seemed like a reliable member of the squad, just a bit hard to read. You know what's not hard to read? That like button, and hit that subscribe so unlike Samjo, you won't hop into a pool of tears and become one with your original self again. Speaking of Samjo, we had a massive roster of new characters that we got to know more about in this Canto. This turned out to be a bit of a double-edged sword, and I'm starting to think that Project Moon takes its cues from Game of Thrones. They're out here like, hey, you like these characters? Too bad, they're dead now. Just to point out a few of these characters, we have Samjo, which was the assistant to KC Corp and is now a puddle. Shireen, who was so indecisive between loyalty to her corporation and to her friend that she literally split down the middle. Ran, who was so excited about her side projects that she is now all over the place, Yamcha style. And it just kept happening in this Canto. In fact, I think the only two people we were introduced to that are still around are both Alfonso, affectionately called the Monster Energy drink mascot, and Kubo, who didn't really show up as much as was in a flashback scene in Yeang's backstory. Now, nothing in these Cantos go without some story or lore, but there are plenty of things that I would write off in this one in particular. Most of the time we spend exploring KC Corp, for example. Our contract signing that in the end equated to absolutely fucking nothing. Even the retelling to us, the managers, about what healing bullets were was just meh. However, the constant hints that someone in the corporation was well known to one of our sinners, and how both of them used to be part of a group together, was starting to build to something that had me constantly wondering who he was talking about. Even though I knew the Kanto was Yeang's, there were several intelligent sinners that they could have been talking about. And even though I said that healing bullets were not that important to retell us, the story did give us some major clues towards a lot of tech that made my head spin. Also, if you were here for my intervallo video, you would know that I was annoyed by the implementation of how the concept incinerator was treated, but in this Kanto, they fixed its explanation. Not only did we learn the limitations of that tech, but we also learned a lot about other types of tech, with a certain focus of freeing people's limitations with a kind of mirror tech? Guys, the callback here to Cromer in Canto 3 was great. We finally get to know what Yeang created, this tech which allowed him to see a mirror world version of himself, and then not understanding what the reflection truly meant until the end of the Canto. But I want to give some special attention to that later in this video. So, not only does KC Corp have healing tech, but they also have acid modules, which Ishmael learned the hard way as we watched in horror, as after jumping in the way of those modules to save Dante's life, she melted in front of us. Guys, there's a theme that was noticed as we made our way through this peak Kanto. And that theme was that no matter what tech was created for, no matter how good the intentions of the person who made it was, that this world will twist it into something evil and use it in the most immoral of ways. I would normally make a joke here with you guys asking me how, but you know how. Yeang made the mirror technology, allowing him to see into other worlds for the betterment of his own and his very own company, us and the Limbus Company, used the same tech to find stronger IDs for our sinners in order to better slaughter those that oppose us. The singularity at the center of K Corp's entire enterprise was an entity that, with the use of its tears, would wash away the sorrow and suffering of the world. It could heal all pain and cure all disease, and while it still does that, unlike when it was found by its sweet founder of K Corp, who would tell its stories to collect the tears of the eyeball creature, now it's strapped down and forced to watch the suffering of the world to increase its own output for their corporate greed, even if that suffering is manufactured by the same corporation. While this section is primarily about the tech, the best intentions analogy doesn't stop with machines, because let's face it, Dongren fell into the pits of hell himself with his best intentions. When we first see him in Yeang's flashback, he is a modest man who dreams of healing the world, and in a twisted way, he does succeed. Very shortly after joining K Corp, it is he who suggests recording the world's tragedies and even orchestrating some of them in order to make the singularity cry more, allowing K Corp to make more healing modules and bullets that in a twisted way heal more of the world. However, we also find out that the corporation is the reason Sinclair went through his pain in the previous Kanto. The group that saved us so that we might be able to save the rest of the sinners had a secondary goal of checking the gear to get the footage back to the singularity. For the anguish that Sinclair and the rest of the sinners felt as they fought Cromer was needed for Dongrang's new world where suffering leads to healing. And all this started with his best intentions. However, as the saying goes, the path to hell is lined with good intentions. And in a place like the city, which is an embodiment of hell, all good intentions seem to turn on their dreamers extremely hard. Well, that was deep. Seems like we're making a habit of this in these videos from time to time, so it's time for us to move on to something a little bit more my pace. Speaking of horrors, as is tradition on my channel with these videos, we have to talk about the small horror aspects in the Kanto. And guys, I get it, you are desensitized to this game's horror aspects. They don't affect you, but I still like to look, and let me have my little indulgences, please. This particular part of the story, I feel, has two different aspects in it. In the beginning, we have sort of like a Terminator quality as the machines K Corp uses to supplement their forces are hacked and used against us. The techno revolution is here, and now our white mages are trying to kill us. The other part comes at the end of the Kanto. Again, I'll go over in more detail when we get to that part. The clues of someone feeling trapped as if in a cage of sorts are constantly being sprinkled in as we make our way through the terrorist attacks on the building. Oh, and talking about horror some more, that damn eyeball that sits in the center of K Corp's whole operation. They strap it in like Blanca from that shitty Street Fighter movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme. Tangent here, but did you guys know that this was Raul Julia's last role? That man was an icon, and he played the part just because his kids were fans of the game. And he did it with cancer. Talk about some dedication to your family. Anyway, they have this thing strapped up watching horrible things happen to make it cry in order to create their modules. And let's face it, this thing is massively creepy. It was mentioned in my tier list, but Marisol makes a name for himself as when the sinners go full Sherlock Holmes mode and realize that someone has betrayed K Corp. And as we are about to enter the dungeon, we are now playing mystery spy thriller. I can't lie, guys, Project Moon is good at writing so many genres of story that sometimes they manage to whiplash even me from time to time with how fast they can change story beats. I will say the anticipation always runs high when you guys warn me about a boss that is coming up. Oddly, it doesn't ruin the game. It adds a new flavor to it that I don't think would be there if I just came across these foes in the wild. but when Dawn Beck showed up, the whole story twisted to her whims, if even for just a small section of the Kanto. Now, even though the warnings were not bad guys, you constantly backseating the fights has gotta stop. It's a bit annoying, and honestly, I would have too tried the flower girl if you guys hadn't told me to ruin the duel section of her fight by freeing one of my sinners. Which, in hindsight, I'll take partial credit for, because I listened to you and I didn't read instead. I know, bad Alden, bad. Honestly, with the hype you guys gave her, I thought I'd be here for a month. But I moved on, and every time I'm stunned with how well the music runs the story we are in. How well Project Moon manages to direct their games. Even though this is the longest Kanto I have been in so far, it did little to bother me, except the amount of streams it took for me to show you guys me doing it all the way through. Weirdly, the only thing that confused me was when Yeang took over the power of the Golden Bow, in a weird way that made it so that his past had to be reenacted by all the sinners, and if one of us didn't play our role, we got intact. Over the course of these flashbacks, we figure out who betrayed Yeang's friends group, which I forgot to bring up was the original Circle of Nine or League of Nine, whichever one. Sadly, I called the asshole out in the very beginning of the Kanto, but you guys in the audience were trying to gaslight me like I'm some kind of fucking kitchen stove, and it didn't work. The whole dungeon screams of Yeang's depression, his battle with his potential that he hearkens for in his mirror, and the betrayal brought on by Dong Ring, a once kind-hearted member of the Nine, who only wanted to heal the world, turned traitor, and went corporate. This is one thing that confuses me though a bit. Why is independent research frowned upon so much, guys? I get corporations wanting to run everything in the city, but what is to stop solo scientists from sharing their work after it's finished? It does seem like they discover some great things on their own somehow. Anyway, enough with that. If you know, let me know, unless it contains some spoilers for any of Project Moon's games at least. I'm really loving that each of the sinners tend to either continue to be themselves, as in Raja or Gregor, or accept themselves, or at least become slightly a better person than they were, like Sinclair did. And Yeang falls into that last category. In both his past, when he chooses to leave his room, and in the present, when he realizes that he is the Yi with wings, he overcomes his depression and his inner demons. In the past, it was his depression and reliance on his device that he was able to overcome. In the present, his wings set him free of his past and allow him not only to beat back his past literally in defeating Dong Rang, but let him know that he was the true Yeang all along. That the wings reflected in his mirror were his all along, and when the music swells and Yi finally flew on his free wings, the rest of the longest Kanto just becomes a dot on the map, as the peak swells to its highest form. Before I did this Kanto, I was warned I would cry at this point. While I did not, I did feel a bit of emotion. I don't know how someone could not feel a little something at this point in the story if they were at least paying attention to it. And in the downslide, where we find out that KC Corp is secretly working with Will Smith and the rest of the Men in Black with another new tech that, what the hell guys, they can erase memories from everyone but Dante. Another goddamn question I have in this game, they better start answering some of these questions soon, or I'm going to have a longer list on what the hell's going on than a script for one of these Kantos. Okay. And like that, we close out another video. If I got anything wrong, I know you'll let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and hey, don't forget to check out our memberships or affiliate links. I added a whole bunch of Halloween costumes of the Sinners. If you guys are interested in getting one, I would do it now if you're going to get it in time for Halloween. Anyway, guys, like always, be good to each other. See you in the next video. Peace.